She's so fine. Hell of a blows my mind. Hell of a lights my day.
What's good, guys? This story came out 23 hours ago, coming out of Nashville, Tennessee. Nashville police released body cam video of officer shooting man with 2 butcher knives during traffic stop. Nashville police released body camera footage Saturday showing an officer fatally shoot a man who charged at him with 2 butcher knives during a traffic stop about a potentially stolen vehicle. Metropolitan Nashville Police Department Chief John Drake said it appeared Officer Christopher Royer was, quote, possibly justified, end quote, in shooting the knife-wielding man. He said the video shows the officer was left with, quote, no choice, end quote, but to shoot after he retreated and asked the individual to drop the weapon several times, even as the man entered the driver's door of the police car and charged toward the officer. Quote, no officer wants to encounter these types of situations. It's always the unknown when we respond to calls, and he did everything he could. He retreated. He ordered him to put the knives down, Drake said. This appears to be possibly justified. We'll find out once the investigation moves forward, but officers are put in these situations, and it's unfortunate, end quote. Drake also rejected the notion Royer should have used a taser to de-escalate the situation, telling reporters an officer, quote, can't use a less lethal force if someone is attacking you with a knife, end quote. Officer Royer was on, quote, routine patrol, end quote, just before midnight in the area of Clarksville Pike and Ed Temple Boulevard, when he checked the license plate of a white late model Mercedes sedan, police spokesman Don Aaron said at a press conference on Saturday. The license plate on that Mercedes came back registered to a 1998 green Chevy. And Officer Royer conducted a vehicle stop to investigate the license plate issue, he said. The driver of the Mercedes saw Officer Royer's blue lights and stopped at 3236 Clarksville Pike. Quote, the driver presented no issues at any time, Aaron said at the press conference. The passenger, however, immediately got out of the Mercedes with 2 large butcher knives, one in each hand, and began running around erratically. Officer Royer repeatedly yelled for the man to drop the knives, even as he momentarily entered the driver's door of Officer Royer's police car, Aaron said. The driver of the Mercedes also yelled at the passenger, what are you doing? And stop. Ultimately, the passenger charged Officer Royer with the knives, as Officer Royer backpedaled some 25 yards from his police car, end quote. Body camera footage released by the department Saturday showed the officer get out of the car and yell, quote, hey, hands in the air, end quote, and, quote, drop the knife, end quote. As the officer backs up, the man opens the driver's door of the police car, and the officer yells, quote, get out of the car, drop the knife, end quote. I don't want to shoot you, the officer is heard yelling as the man runs toward him. 3 shots can be heard in the video, and the officer radios that shots were fired. Quote, stay over there, the officer yells to the driver, who by then had gotten out of the Mercedes. What are you doing, man? The officer says. I did not want to have to do that, end quote. The man died shortly after arriving at Vandy Medical Center, Aaron said. He has not been publicly identified by authorities. Royer is a 4-year veteran of the Nashville Police Department and, per policy, was placed on administrative assignment as the TBI and Davidson County District Attorney's Office investigate and analyze this incident, Aaron said. Quote, our police department will also be conducting an administrative review of this action to ensure it meets the high standards that is expected of our officers, end quote, he added. Quote, when I got the call this morning, I had mixed emotions, especially with all that's going on around the nation and this city, Nashville Chief of Police John Drake said. The shooting happened just days after former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin was convicted of the murder and manslaughter of George Floyd last May. Even with the guilty verdicts handed down, criticism of law enforcement across the country has persisted, specifically over officer-involved shootings of black people. In one recent incident last week, protests erupted in Columbus, Ohio, even after released body camera footage showed 16-year-old Micaiah Bryant lunging at another young woman with what appeared to be a knife before the police officer responding to a 911 call fatally shot her. In Nashville, Drake said the body camera video does not show that 5 other officers later arrived at the scene and rendered aid to the individual after he was shot. Quote, "No officer wants to deal with this type of situation as Officer Royer encountered tonight. He did everything he could, I felt. He retreated. He asked the individual to drop the weapon several times," the police chief said. "He continued charging at him, and he was left with no choice," end quote. The driver of the Mercedes is not in custody and was compliant with Officer Royer, Drake said. Explaining the reason for the vehicle stop, the chief said Nashville sees about 3,000 stolen vehicles a year, and, quote, "officers run tags all the time to determine if vehicles are stolen or not," end quote. Quote, "I'm sure he did have a taser. Our officers are issued tasers. But in most situations, that's a lethal situation," Drake said. He de-escalated by retreating. He moved backwards, again ordering the individual to drop the weapon. "You can't use a less lethal if someone is attacking you with a knife," end quote. Drake said drugs, namely marijuana in, quote, "individual plastic bags," end quote, was found at the scene, but what prompted the individual's, quote, "rather bizarre behavior," end quote, as he got out of the vehicle with 2 knives and ran toward the officer remains under investigation at this time.
Good morning. Thank you for being with us this morning. Just before midnight, North Precinct Officer Christopher Royer was on routine patrol in the area of Clarksville Pike and Ed Temple Boulevard when he checked the license plate of a white, late model Mercedes sedan. The license plate on that Mercedes came back registered to a 1998 green Chevrolet. Officer Royer conducted a vehicle stop on the Mercedes to investigate the license plate issue. The driver of the Mercedes saw Officer Royer's blue lights and stopped at 3236 Clarksville Pike. The driver presented no issues at any time. The passenger, however, immediately got out of the Mercedes with 2 large butcher knives, 1 in each hand, and began running around erratically. Officer Royer repeatedly yelled for the man to drop the knives, even as he momentarily entered the driver's door of Officer Royer's police car. The driver of the Mercedes also repeatedly yelled at the passenger, "What are you doing?" and "Stop." Ultimately, the passenger charged Officer Royer with the knives as Officer Royer backpedaled some 25 yards from his police car. You will now see footage from Officer Royer's body-worn camera. A word of caution: the images and information you are about to see may be disturbing to watch. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey, stay in the car. Drop the knife. Give me the air. Clarksville Pike, 3236. He's got a knife. Get out of the car! Get out of the car! Drop the knife! Drop the knife!
What are you doing?
Dude, what are you doing? Drop the knife! I don't want to shoot you!
Stop!
I don't want to shoot you!
Stop!
Hey, give me some cars up here. He's got a knife. Give me some cars. He's got a knife. Drop it! 13 shots fired. Give me some cars up here. Clarksville Pike just past Buena Vista. Hey, stay over there! Stay over there! Dude, what are you doing, man? Come on! I did not want to have to do that.
The as-yet unidentified man died shortly after arriving at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. Officer Royer is a 4-year veteran of the Nashville Police Department. By policy, he is now on administrative assignment as the TBI and the Davidson County District Attorney's Office investigate and analyze this incident. Our police department will also be conducting an administrative review of this interaction to ensure that it meets the high standards expected of our officers. And now Chief John Drake will speak to you about this morning's shooting.
morning, and thank you all for being here. When I got the call this morning, I had mixed emotions, especially with all that's going on around the nation and in this city, to say. And so no officer wants to deal with this type of situation as Officer Roy encountered tonight. He did everything he could, I felt. He retreated. He asked the individual to drop the weapon several times. He continued charging at him, and he was left with no choice. What you don't see on there is that when he was down, there was 5 officers that rendered aid to this individual. We don't know. The TBI is investigating this incident, but his rather bizarre behavior, we'll try to find out what all this stemmed from. But right now, we're still investigating this. The TBI will be looking into it, the DA's office, and we'll move forward. And so I'll take any questions that you have.
Chief Drake, could you explain the protocol? What prompted the officer to put in that license plate to search for it?
Well, we have a number of stolen vehicles, usually around 3,000 a year. Officers run tags all the time to determine if vehicles are stolen or not. When he ran this particular vehicle, it was on a white Mercedes, but it came back to a green Chevy, and so he went further in his investigation. The driver of the vehicle was fine. It was the individual that got out of the passenger side. So,
what is the status of the driver? What is he in custody or being questioned, or what's going on with that?
The TBI is still investigating this. He's not in our custody. He was very compliant with officers. He actually was telling the individual to drop the knives themselves, I believe. Asked him what he was doing. I think he was confused as to behavior as well, and this was his passenger.
Do you know if the driver acknowledged the passenger had those weapons on him?
I don't have that knowledge. So.
Did I hear correctly that there were 3 shots fired by the officer?
I can't give you the number. There was 2 or 3. It could have been more. So the TBI is investigating that.
It looked like he only had pulled his pistol. Did he have a taser or any other less lethal option he might have had at the beginning?
In those situations, you can't. I'm sure he did have a taser. Our officers are issued tasers, but in those situations, that's a lethal situation. He de-escalated by retreating. He moved backwards. Again, ordering the individual to drop the weapon. In those situations, it's a lethal. You can't use less lethal if someone's attacking you with a knife.
Do we know the relationship between the driver and the passenger? Were they just friends or relatives? Or?
Don't know the relationship. Just know they were together. The vehicle was stopped, and the passenger got out and started running around with knives. I would love to know more about it. The behavior is bizarre, but as the investigation continues, we'll learn more.
Do we know if there was any drugs, alcohol, or anything that may point to that inside the vehicle?
There were some drugs at the scene. It's a marijuana, I think, was a bag with individual plastic bags. Unsure the amount, but unsure if that has actually played a role in it or not. So.
Could you clarify the spelling and title of the officer?
He's a police officer. His spelling of his last name is Royer, and Christopher.
Christoph.
Yes.
4 years on the force?
4 years, yes.
Was the car determined whether it was stolen or not?
Don't have those facts yet. The investigation's continuing. So.
When you have a shooting like this, like you said, with everything else that's been going on, and it looks like your officer did everything right, protocol, everything else, is it a good sign to see and to show the public that these officers are put in these situations, and that not all of them are in a bad light or anything, that they do have to do what they have to do?
That's exactly right, and no officer wants to encounter these types of situations, but it's always the unknown when we respond to calls, and he did everything he could. He retreated. He ordered him to put the knives down. These situations come up out of the just out of the blue sometimes, and all are not bad incidents. This appears to possibly be justified. We'll find out once the investigation moves forward. But the officers are put in these situations, and it's unfortunate.
So there you have it, guys. Another incident involving the police shooting someone. But what is more important, I believe, in this situation is just what it shows us, that this incident happened on Saturday, and here it is Monday. And this video was actually released around midnight. So what is taking so long to release the footage in Elizabeth City, North Carolina? I think we all know. But I just wanted to bring this story to the channel because I live roughly an hour and a half from Nashville, and I hadn't heard about this incident. So I wanted to at least put some awareness on it. In my opinion, the officer did show extreme patience. I mean, even the damn driver didn't know what in the hell was going on with the passenger. Why did he jump out and act a fool like that? I don't know. I will be interested to find out, though. And, you know, was it justified or not? Who knows? We'll have to see when the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation gets done with their report. Now, I do believe he did try his very best to avoid that situation. And you have to remember, though, you can't even compare this to the Ma'Khia Bryant situation, because this man was actually running at the officer with two, not one knife, two knives. And we've seen the picture of the knives. I still haven't seen a picture of the knives or the knife in the Ma'Khia Bryant situation. So I was looking every day and hadn't come across it. So maybe I need to look again today and see if I can find it, because I was very interested to see what that knife looked like. She had to have gotten it from inside the house. Was it a butter knife? Was it a steak knife? You know, what was it? So I'm going to end the video on that note. Thanks for watching, guys. I will put the link to the actual full video in the description box. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day.